Okay, so to start with, could I get your full name and date of birth, please?
Daniel McLeod Parker, January 7th, 1989.
So, could you give me your rank and what branch of the military you were in?
I was a Lance Corporal, United States Marine Corps, attached to 1st Battalion, 2nd Marines.
And while you were serving in the Marines, what was your official job?
I was an infantryman.
Infantryman? Okay. So, when you were deployed, how would mail delivery work?
Mail delivery, typically when we were in Iraq. So I got three different experiences, if you'll bear with me. Iraq, we were close to a main fob. So typically mail was pretty much on time. It would be flown in. Never in any three of the situations I've been in overseas has mail been handled appropriately. But in Iraq, typically we received mail pretty much on time and without little to no damage to the packages. In Afghanistan was kind of a completely different story. Obviously, it was more remote locations, a lot more damage. A lot of packages got lost. When I was on ship for an ACB deployment back in 2011, it would get sent to a ship, and then it would be when we would receive supplies from the other ships, it would kind of be zip lined over. And obviously you're going to receive damage to, certain packages. But for the most part, I mean, not as bad as in Afghanistan as far as lost packages.
So, what is an ACB deployment? Or
You're as an infantry battalion in the Marine Corps, you're put on. Everybody goes through a rotation of air contingency battalion. When the stuff took place with Libya, and there's an uproar. Well, the MEU that was out there, the MEU is Marine Expeditionary Unit, which consists of a lot of your ships and your submarines that are almost always deployed overseas. Their ground force was 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines. They were dropped off in Afghanistan, so they no longer had a ground force aboard the ships. And due to the operations that was going to be taking place in Libya, they needed ground forces. As an air contingency battalion, your job then becomes you're on standby for an entire month. Every company takes time, and you get a phone call. You got 72 hours notice. Your bags are already packed. You load, you go. You don't know if it's a drill or if it's the real deal. And you show up, you get your brief, and kind of just roll the punches.
Okay, I see. So you mentioned that it was quite common for packages to be lost or damaged. Like, how common was that, though? Like,
Afghanistan, I mean, you have to take into account that who's actually handling the packages is other. Uh-oh. We're back. Your mic's off.
Sorry. I guess I'm having a little bit of internet trouble because, of course, I would be.
Okay. Where were we?
You were discussing who was handling packages in Afghanistan.
Yes. In the military, you get tasked with other jobs. It doesn't matter what your real job is, what you're trained to do. I mean, you can get tasked with whatever, and that mail is no different. Yes, you might have one person that's actually specialized in the mail service, but as far as those that we would go for our own platoon for some of our fobs and pick up mail, load them in the back of trucks. There has been occasions when, we've blown up trucks with mail in it. And I mean, we try to, preserve as much as we can, but, life over that obviously takes priority. Situation always dictates, but so you have guys that you're just trying to load packages and stuff so they can get out of the heat, get back somewhere where they can just take a rest before they have to go on the next patrol and whatnot. So this job is like a little side job, it's like a little chore that's got to get done, and they're rushing. No one's really giving care for the packages and stuff. Things are getting thrown around, crammed into every little crevice that you can, just trying to make it to the person. So
Okay, I see. So do you know if, I know you were Marines, but do you know if this was the same procedure in the other branches, where mail delivery was effectively handled by whoever was around that could do it?
I would say I was spent 3 years in the Army National Guard. I never deployed with them. But a lot of the guys there, when we taught deployments and stuff, it was pretty much similar. Everything was pretty much the similar activity. Army, obviously, they had a lot more resources, but still, even in your remote locations, I mean, you're getting what you get. If it's got to be flown in, and some places, some fobs that are out there, their resupply literally comes from airdrop. And yeah, it's parachuted down and stuff, but when that pallet lands, you got to do what you can do with it. So
Okay. So when you were deployed, did you personally receive packages?
yes,
Could you tell me a little bit about them?
I received packages from my mother, my sister, my wife, and no matter, and even there was occasions when even we would get random packages from USO, which would typically be split between battalions. A lot of different other organizations that would send packages out that always got divided up and shared equally amongst the platoons. A lot of little things as far as the packages went, little things like a wife or girlfriend sending, they'll take like a letter or a whatever note card, and they'll spray their perfume on it. Little sentimental things like that still kind of snap back to bring you back to home and remind you of kind of get into those senses to revive that sense of connection back to home. There was that whether it was some type of home baked goods, or your favorite tobacco or stuff, which tobacco, that's a whole other story. I don't know if you want to get into that. That became illegal to ship. So a lot of spouses and stuff would, spouses and family members would typically conceal it some way in the packages. Alcohol was completely forbidden, but there was always people out there that was trying to be sneaky about it. Listerine bottles, you name the tricks, they would try it.
So what were some of the ways that they concealed the items they weren't supposed to be sending?
As far as tobacco went, it was pretty simple. I mean, just had the package sealed before arriving at the post office. Little things, not fully sure how or what they did, but
Okay.
back
Okay. Okay, back on, yeah.
back to alcohol. Obviously, that's a punishable offense overseas. To be impaired like that, to even be in possession of it. So people, like I said, the Listerine bottles, they'll take any kind of clear Listerine, they'll dump it out, they'll put vodka in it. We had a couple guys actually got NJP'd, non-judicial punishment. So they received a lot of the busting down in rank and a lot of punishments that was given out for little stuff like that. As far as alcohol went, that was a very serious offense, because that's just something over there you cannot, have, even be off your toes a little bit. What's another way I'm trying to think of? I want to say that there was even a perfume bottle or something that had contained it at one time for one of the guys. This was not in my platoon, so obviously this would be hearsay. that traveled throughout the platoon, or traveled throughout the battalion and company. So
Okay, interesting. So, going back to contents a little bit, what were some of the other things that you saw you or other people getting? You mentioned personalized letters and baked goods, but what were some of the other things?
energy drinks. Energy drinks was always awesome. Things that you really couldn't get a hold of over there. Yeah, you might have had your basic supplies, but everything from your letters, your uh, energy drinks, monsters, Red Bulls, overseas. And I don't know, you ever heard any of the other veterans talk about Rippets? That's what we had overseas was Rippets. So you can go now and get the big old cans for like $1, but all we had was small ones in Iraq, Afghanistan. We always tried to stock up on as much of that as we could, but our personal stash come from our care packages as far as energy drinks. I mean, we lived off of Red Bull, Monster, and nicotine, and those were like the big high value items as far as nicotine and energy drinks, and then getting into supplements. Some people would even go so far as supplements like protein powders, your pre-workouts, and stuff like that.
Interesting. So, with
awesome. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Photos awesome.
Photos.
I love
Okay.
photos.
Were there any sort of regulations regarding what photos could be sent, or was it just a?
No, actually, no. Obviously, you kept personal, like certain photos you kept to yourself. I mean, but there's, as far as any kind of photos, there was nothing. I mean, no one really was there to monitor it. So just like I said with tobacco, I mean, if you got it packaged up and ready to send out, typically a lot of times it was easier to send it on some type of SD card or hard drive, because almost everybody overseas has some laptop or something that they can utilize to view photos and videos.
Okay. So when you were deployed, was how much access to electronics did you have? I know it was the time period you mentioned, so it is right. It seems right around that time where things are starting to really speed up on access, but
it's nowhere near like nowadays. I've heard guys nowadays talk. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Back then, it was we were back on our fob. We in Afghanistan we had pretty much a constant access as long as we were on our fob. However, communications over like going back, and even though it exists, anytime we had a casualty, which would be call sign was or code name was River City, all comms, all communications, all that shut down. So yeah, you have a personal laptop, but I could never access internet. Sorry about that. I can never access like on my personal computer. I would have to go to the MWR or something along one of the bigger bases in Iraq. When we were originally at our platoon fobs, we had zero. I mean, we had electricity. So, I mean, if you brought a laptop or whatnot, and you had a laptop, you were good to go. But as far as communications, that was sat phone, or you went back to Habaniya, Camp Habaniya and whatnot to access the larger MWRs, where almost it's like everybody has access now. It seems like where they can just access it from their own personal devices. You had to use theirs, and that would always be dependent upon River City. If we were in River City, things were shut down. So, but as far as our electricity went, I mean, we pretty much had electricity due to our trucks, our fobs. I mean, we had electricity pretty much wherever we go, unless we were in the dirt itself. And there was only, certain timeframes. And at that point, in those timeframes, you really wasn't thinking or even concerned about the electronics or any of that.
Okay. So you mentioned a thing that people enjoyed was personalized letters, but with these letters, in your experience, were they typically handwritten? Were they typed?
Most were handwritten. And I think if I had some that was typed. When I was on ship, they have something slightly different where it does come typed, and it's set up through like an email system that goes to the ship, and the ship prints it out like mail. I'm trying to remember what it was actually called because I was on a ship for a very brief time. But so you send like an email out. I had the worst communication out of all three of my deployments was on ship. As far as getting a hold of, the communications to use and if the communications, because it all depends on where you're at and to see whether or not, they turned on, turned off. But as far as letters went, I would get handwritten mostly while deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, which also gave more personalization there. And then on ship, like you would get a printed out email. I can't even remember what it was called now.
So about how long was the turnaround for things sent via mail, standard mail, not the email system on ship?
On ship, as far as referring to like mailing something out or receiving them?
Well, I was thinking receiving of about how long would you say that it would take to actually get things sent?
I'd say easily 4 weeks, roughly. I'm hitting or missing. I mean, my deployment on ship was unlike a lot of other people's. Our stuff was set up. Typically, when you get ready to go on ship, as a Marine, you're doing a whole workup, everything's planned out and plotted. Well, we weren't originally decided. So there was a whole lot of that logistics that was put into place, even down to those type of emails and email addresses and your ship addresses. So a lot of logistics had to go into place and had to go into place quickly. So like for me to say 4 weeks, I mean, that's with a whole lot of logistics going on. So I can't say that that's typically how it goes for the ship life over. We're just talking about ship or
both ship and standard deployments.
Standard. Iraq was typically quicker, just because everything had been established, was set up. Where I was located in Afghanistan, we had took over from the British forces, and so we're building bases, we're expanding an area of operation or AO, and so nothing's already in America hasn't had any kind of, we're not taking over from another battalion, so nothing's set up. Things took it would seem like months to get packages. There's been many occasions where you didn't receive a package and you'd make it back to your unit, and your unit would receive the package after you're back that was actually originally sent overseas. Typically those just, you don't even see them again, but there was rare occasions when we got back from packages even making it back. So time frames, a month or more.
Do you have any theories as to why it was so common for mail to get lost?
Oh, easily. I mean, speaking of Afghanistan, if mail was coming on a log train, which log train consists of, just a lot of supply trucks with, probably a mile long of supply trucks that is their job is to go out and hit these little fobs and hit all these nooks and crannies of Afghanistan where all the Marines and some of your soldiers are also located. They're leaving out with all the supplies. And I can't tell you, I know we followed the log train out, and I think when we left Camp Leatherneck, to head to Musa Kala, Afghanistan, which actually plotted on the map ain't very far, but took us 3 days to make it there because of the amount of explosions. So the IEDs that they are just literally in Afghanistan, whether they're placed there from them or it's left over from when the Russians was in, we hit, we dealt with anti-tank mines that was still left on hillsides from the Russia. So the whole country is littered with a whole lot of IEDs or landmines. So you're dealing with a lot of lost stuff that you blow up the right truck as far as supply train goes. It's kind of hard to divvy up that much supplies. So things are going to get lost to the wayside. And 80 pounds HME, it blows something up. There's going to be packages and pieces and stuff that you're just never going to find. And I think that dealt a lot with it.
Okay. Interesting. So getting back to packages themselves, were there any particular favorite things that you or like our favorite packages themselves that you or your fellow soldiers got?
Trying to think back, like it's
or even just memorable packages that arrived.
It's hard to like really center out one, and a lot of it is very blurry. But I remember my sister with the energy drinks. She was the only one to send energy drinks. Almost everybody else sent little Gatorades or stuff. And my wife was so used to or accustomed to her father, where when he was deployed, it was completely different. You're talking about Panama, Desert Storm, Desert Shield timeframe, where he worked with a lot of special operations units. So he's very light packaged as far as when he was moving and stuff. So when my wife would send stuff, it'd be little Gatorades, it'd be smaller items that could go into the cargo pocket. But I remember one thing that sticks out to me is big old one of the large twist top monsters that my sister sent. And I think that thing lasted me 3 days. It was pretty awesome because I'm not accustomed to receiving those large items like that. And I think that stuck out, along with when I was on ship receiving the package with some homemade baked goods, some I can't remember what kind of cookies are right now. It was they're a no bake. I can't remember what they are actually called. Anyways, some of those that I actually enjoyed, and my wife's perfume. So that was kind of a touch that I'd seen other people experience it in Iraq, but then speaking of Iraq, wasn't my memorable, but I mean, I don't know what kind of rating you want to keep this at.
Feel free if it comes to mind.
Yeah, and Afghanistan, literally, or not Afghanistan, in Iraq. We were in Rawa, Iraq, and one of the guys in our platoon, his wife sent him a whole box for the entire platoon of small pocket pussies. Literally I shit you not, and sent those out. And I mean, it was just one of those things that just it lit up the entire platoon just because it was just so hilarious. And of course, she had whatever personalized stuff to him that that was between him and her. But she literally sent those small little things out to give out to the entire platoon and stuff. So it was pretty crazy. That one definitely will always stick in my brain, even though it wasn't sent to me. It's one of those crazy things that you'd never think that would happen.
Just so we're on the same page, how many people is a platoon?
Platoon is typically made up of 30.
30. Okay.
Hit
That
or
must have been a
miss.
big box.
Well, they were I mean, they were very small. That almost similar to like, those little squishy things that you would like stress squishies that
Okay.
have like the glitter. So it's very, very small size ones. Wasn't like,
Gotcha.
a flashlight or anything crazy like that. But yeah, just um yeah. I want to say it was sent out to the whole platoon. I'm trying to remember if it was the platoon or just squad is made up of 12 men. I'm trying to think of how we were bunked in Rava. It's quite a long time ago. So it might have just been the squad. I'm trying to think. Squad plus some attachments. So you're thinking maybe 15 of them actually got sent. So
Okay.
squad is made up of 12 men, and then you got your attachments of, whether assaultmen, corpsmen, whatever. Well, a few of the guys that would add to the squad.
Okay. So you mentioned before that organizations like the USO would send packages as well. Could you tell
Yes.
me a little bit about those?
Yes. We would always get we get in little letters that kids had set down and made, and we always, got a kick out, and we'd always take turns reading certain ones that, they could be really good, like as sincere as it was, and our laughter about it was not really at them. Obviously, they're looking at their kids, and we very much appreciate it because it cheered us up in a way that, as military joke, kind of harshly. But obviously nitpicking and picking at certain things that would come from them. The USO would send, it seemed like, so much tissues and like socks. Socks is another one. That was also on a personalized list. I completely forgot about this. This is actually bringing back a lot of memories. But as far as USO goes, they would send like a lot of necessities, your lotion, like lotions and stuff like that. Toothpaste, toothbrushes, some hard candies and stuff. I mean, it was really great. A lot, not to really have to worry about those kind of things when, a supply train would come around and you need to purchase supplies. You ain't got to worry about purchasing these, toothbrush and toothpaste and stuff like that. You can focus on purchasing, nicotine or caffeine or whatever's, going to keep you sane. So, but the USO definitely, they were great about always providing the little necessities and a lot of times overlooked. Baby wipes galore. And that was almost in every care package I think I ever received, to include the USO always send. We would literally stack up baby wipes when Afghanistan or Iraq. You sit down to clean heavy weapons, and you're not supposed to use baby wipes because of the material that's in it, but they were perfect for cleaning up dust, not to mention your body as well, especially when, I was blessed to have access to showers in Iraq all the way up till Rawa when the showers froze and stuff due to the cold. Yeah, when we moved to Rawa, we were there by closer to Syria at that time, and it got pretty cold around December. They trying to think. So baby wipes, definitely. When I was in Iraq, I remember plenty of times with your uniforms. I know there's lots of jokes about it, but legitimately being able to take them off, because the salt and everything you've sweated through, you've worn them for so many days. Take them off and just lay them down, and they're like a stiff board. So you got to hand wash them out or whatnot. In Afghanistan, we had a lot more resources that were more portable at the time frame as far as showers went. that the British had already kind of left us. So we had access to those quite a bit, but still, baby wipes, your little necessities from the USO always came in handy, whether it was shampoo, soap, baby wipes, even the hard candies, because you start running low on supplies, and those candies that don't never really want to touch because you don't like, become very popular real quick. When you come down to, it's between your couple-year-old MRE and the little bit of candy that's in it that's dry rotting, or some fresh hard candies that you'd find at your grandma's house, or at old aunt's house. These hard candies were become little trinkets as you drifted time in part from getting packages. As mail came, and when mail came, you might get 1 or 2 packages at the same time that were shipped at separate time frames.
Mhm.
So
Were there any other organizations that you remember that you received packages from, or
not that
people you knew that got them?
some churches that had sent them out, but I can't really think of a lot right offhand now.
Okay, fair. So you mentioned in the middle of the USO thing that socks triggered a memory.
Yes, socks. Oh, socks is a grunt's best friend. You always need extra socks. You're out and you're patrolling for hours, and some of the crazy heat and the weather, your feet is, that's your means of transportation. That's your lifeline. So when it comes to from, that you got to take care of your feet, whether it's deal with blisters and everything, and changing your socks and stuff is such a big thing that you'll see memes and jokes about Navy corpsmen that corpsman, all he's going to tell you to do is take Motrin, change your socks, and drink water. That big of a, typically those back home didn't really keep up with what was regulation. It's in white socks, and white socks were actually a blessing, even though we weren't supposed to be wearing them. Not that it mattered. We were in the desert. Why didn't black socks really matter than our boots? But it all depends on leadership on that. That's a different story. But socks were definitely a huge blessing because your socks didn't last. You go on patrol every day on your feet, and you would wear through socks, and I honestly, same. I seen a thing the other day, and it is absolutely true. Take a pair of military socks and lay 4 down, and they're both they're both sets, but all 4 are going to be different sizes and different colors, even though they were worn the same amount of time, washed the same amount of time, just because of the wear and tear that goes underneath them and the quality that they're made by. So socks is a grunt. As far as an infantryman, that is a blessing to us.
So you mentioned the white versus black socks. Is that just because fresh socks are best? Is that why you said they were a blessing, or is there something specific about those particular socks?
As far as white versus like our uniform, whether our uniform requirements were, they need to be black or green, the OD green. White socks, just, they're the tube socks that come out, Hanes or whatever brand that got, sent over. White is obviously a less of a conductor of heat than your black, your darker socks. So that was always something that was looked at, because everywhere I went as far as being deployed, you're in a desert. So
Okay, I see. Interesting. Excuse me. So, presuming that you had a family member currently deployed, what would you, if you were putting together a package, what would you send in it?
I'd start out easily with tobacco. And even if that individual doesn't use tobacco, that's now trading. That becomes currency. It sounds like I'm talking like, the guys of Vietnam, but it's as serious as it is. Somebody might get an energy drink, but if that person is, uses some type of nicotine, they'll trade up real quick. So I mean, nicotine right out the gate, whether it's smokes and dip, because like myself, I only dipped, but if I ever received smokes in my packages, I can make a trade for someone that didn't really care for dipping to, they might have some dip. I can make a trade. So it became currencies as far as tobacco went. Definitely socks, energy drinks, Gatorade, and beef jerky. It stays, the heat ain't never going to affect it, and definitely is a huge pick me up as far as just the protein that's in it, and the taste that you're not really going to find out of anywhere else you're eating. So those would be like my main items that I would put on that list.
Okay, interesting. So one more question before I open the floor to anything you just feel like discussing. As a soldier deployed, how would mail work in the other direction? So you wanted to send a letter or something home?
Rarely did that actually take place. I know some people did do it, and there was no issue as far as being able to do it. If you wanted to do it, typically it was just logistics wise, it was a lot easier to make that phone call, or get on, do a video chat, or do an email and communicate via that way. Obviously, there's not really something that was, as far as packaging went, past a letter. I mean, sending written letters, and then that written letters also determine whether or not, if you had the downtime to write the letter, you had the downtime maybe to go and do. There was times, I think, when I got back, I had written a few and never managed to get around to sending anything out. And they ended up just becoming like my own little keepsake, even though it's meant for somebody else. It never really sent it out. So it would be, I'd say, easily the same kind of time frame as far as getting that package back and getting it across, as far as whatever letter or whatnot that's going to be sent. But it wasn't a very large occasion, because when we had the chance to communicate or sit down and do, it was almost best to get to the phones and get that way. I'm trying to think of any time if I was ever sending out any past, when I got back and was going through stuff and realized I didn't even mail out some things that I was going to mail out, because it's just rare.
Okay. So is there anything that you want to discuss that I haven't thought, that I didn't think to ask, or anything like that? Or just any interesting stories you want to tell?
Trying to think. I think I've pretty much kind of let everything out as far as the mail system goes, and my memories of it. It it was always a blessing, and it was always like Christmas Day. Every time, the mail, whether we were doing the mail run to go pick it up for ourselves or whatnot, I'd definitely say that it always boosted morale, no matter what you were getting. So, and that's, yeah, I think that I'm trying to like go back through all my deployments. Yeah. So,
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the interview,
no problem.
even with the technical difficulties.
I completely understand that. It's all good. What is the as far as the thesis of the mail service, as far as this goes, I was wondering.
So what I'm doing is I'm making an exhibit looking at the history of packages through the years. So I'm going to have about World War I and II, talk about the POWs packages from the Red Cross. Unfortunately, there's not much information about Korea, so I'm not going to be able to talk much about that. And then there's going to be a section about Vietnam. There's going to be a section on the and on the wars in the Middle East as well.
Panama. I'll say, yeah, my father-in-law's time frame was a lot of as far as packaging and mail. I mean, cigars was a big thing for them, especially your higher enlisted. That was also something else. But he dealt a lot more with talking about sending letters. His time frame, it was a big thing. They didn't operate a lot as far as their sat phones and stuff like that. I mean, he never called home. They didn't have that opportunity back then. And that's just what I know from what me and him sit down. He was also an infantryman, but he also done a lot of special operations. So a lot of different stricter rules for him that I got a chance to learn a lot from him as far as his times in Panama, some places that are still classified. Obviously the Desert Storm, Desert Shield, the big ones that are on the news and stuff, or the big ones that hit the history books.
Okay, so interesting.
But I'm glad to be able to help. I don't know if I provided any useful information.
Well, you're the first person to talk about the actual difficulties with the logistics of mail. I've talked to several veterans so far, and everybody's mentioned that it took time, but it was fine. You're the first person that's actually gone into the weeds. Like, yeah, I mean, they got there, but a lot of the time they were damaged, they were missing. So it's very valuable. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad to be able to help.
Yeah. I just have one more piece of business. I'm going to send you. I have a release form that I need you to sign. Basically, it's just saying that it's okay for this interview to be put into the Georgia Southern Archive and for historians to use it for if they're writing a book or paper in the future, stuff like that. If you wouldn't mind signing it and then sending it back to me. Okay, thank you. I'll send that right over.
Okay. So is this your thesis? Or
it's officially called a non-thesis project. So I'm making a museum exhibit. I'm actually working with the Fort Stewart Museum, the 3rd Infantry Museum. They're hosting it. Yeah. But yeah. Well, thank you. I'm sure you have other things to do today.
Yeah.
I'll let you go and send that thing over. So whenever you can, just sign it and then scan it and email it back to me, please.
Okay. Can I do that via phone or?
I would, if you can, I would prefer you to like print it and then sign it, because the archive, I'm not sure if doesn't trust is the right word, but they strongly encourage actual signatures and then sending it back.
Okay. I'll have to dig out my printer. All right, I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Have a good day.
You too.